Hello, my dear ones. I hope you're all doing well. The weekend is over. This is Monday morning. What is this, July 10th? Absolutely. You know, I've been trying to catch up with your eyes for the class there, you guys. Boy, I tell you what, those audio iris analysis they're a lot of work. But I was thinking about this last night, and I wanted to talk with you. I'll get to your questions, but you also know that if you have bad symptoms of any kind, you call in here, and then we'll answer your questions here if I can get to them. But you always want to take care of yourself through calling the club and getting some help if you feel like you need it, or advice, that sort of thing. But I wanted to talk with you a little bit, and this is particularly in relationship to this whole ridiculous concept of diseases and this whole understanding of health and disease and sort of things. So I want to talk about the 4 stages that the body goes through from wellness to death, and to help you to understand a little bit how medical doctors pick off symptomology wrongly. Let's think about it. First of all, when you're in your mother, your lymphatic system is hooked to mom. So basically, as luck would maybe not have it, you're starting off with a compromised lymphatic system. Of course, you're starting off with compromised cells, because every cell in your body is a genetic cell. Sorry. And the human body. Think about the human body and how miraculous this is. Think if you're going to build you a house totally out of wood. Okay? Your foundation is wood, your plumbing is wood, your sewer is wood. Everything's wood. That's the human body. Everything is cells. Different shapes, different sizes, different organs, different glands, skin, bone. How slick. All cells. Cool. And then you have to, of course, turn on those cells, activate them with energy and things like this. And then, of course, there are the glands of control, which are the signalers that makes everything happen. And then you have the elimination side of this. But everything, structurally and functionally, are made with cells. Give them chemistry and a blood and a lymph fluids in there, a little H2O perhaps. But ultimately, all tissues are cells, right? How fascinating that is. So, let's start from a very healthy situation where, let's say you come into this world maybe a million years ago or whenever, but you got a very healthy body, right? Now, humans started down this road when they migrated outside of the tropics. They started this acid-ash diets. Acid-ash diets means that the food that you're eating is acid-forming. And we talked about that before. The difference between a lemon, even though it's acidic, is an alkaline ash former. Proteins are acid-ash formers. Most grains are acid-ash formers. All beans are acid ash formers. Pasteurized dairy products are acid ash formers. So all these acid ash formers simply mean, and these are well documented from universities, that the ash, the byproducts, the end all of digestion leaves an acid hit on the body. So that means that the acids go into the blood, this sort of thing. So this begins the process of acidifying the body. Well, the body is a base-dominant body, an alkaline-dominant body, not an acid-dominant body. Therefore, the foods one consumes cannot be acid-ash foods, because that will bring the whole aspect of acidosis, agglomulation, cationic environments, all the things that you're seeing now that medical doctors loosely call diseases. So this starts when man starts consuming foods that, again, have an acid-forming scenario, which then has a bump on the mucosa of the body. Your mucosa of the body is there for your protection. And when you consume foreign chemistry or abrasive chemistry, and this is also true of hot peppers, you get mucus produced from the mucosa. And we all know by now that the number one mucosic responsive proteins are dairy proteins. And this is a problem. Take also that a lot of mothers are consuming acid ash diets, which then are making their fluids in the body acidic, except for the blood. You cannot make your blood acidic without croaking yourself. So important to understand that. And when you start consuming these foods from a healthy scenario, you start creating an acidic environment with mucus. You start getting mucus in the bronchial trunks, in the lungs, in the sinuses. When your body goes to move this, and this is called an acute condition. You've created an acute condition by consuming foods that are foreign to the human body. Remember, we're frugivores. So most things down from there, except for vegetables, have a mucosic response at some level or another. And it creates an acid environment that the body has to deal with, because an acid environment has to be met with electrolytes to neutralize this. And electrolytes come from alkaline dominant foods predominantly. So as we begin to be congested by eating these foods, we're creating acute manifestations. Acute manifestation is simply a cold and flu-like symptom. A cold and flu-like symptom is not something you catch per se. And we'll talk about that. A cold and flu-like symptom, if you look at it, is a detoxification symptom. You get fevers, your body's starting to expectorate mucus, your sinuses, everything gets swelling, then starts to break up. You start getting mucus, coughing up mucus and sinus running, sneezing, pulling this mucus out. Those are acute manifestations. This is simply your body trying to get rid of what you put in there, what you created, not what microbes created, what you created. The suppression of these acute manifestations seen by medical doctors and not understood at all by the medical community, because they treat cold and flu-like symptoms one of the worst things you can do, and a lot of European medical doctors have said, stop treating cold and flu-like symptoms, it's dangerous. That starts the process of these 4 phases of dis-ease. So an acute manifestation, if you have blue eyes, is going to turn it white. Look in your blue eye. Everything that's white in there, in the trabecula, those fibers, that's lymph stagnation of the acidic kind at acute levels. In a brown eye, which most brown eyes are supposed to be light brown, it makes a little darker shade of brown. As we continue to make these acute manifestations by continuing to consume these foods, not relating the fact of cause and effect, not understanding how simple that is, and medical and people blaming other things outside of your diet, then we continue that process of consuming foods we are told through propaganda and brainwashing that are good for us. Like dead animals, dead beans, dead grains, things like this. Nothing living. And of course, as we then suppress these acute, they become subacute. They go down worse. A lot of times you lose symptoms that you even have a problem from this. And this thing starts churning. It turns a blue eye yellow. That white starts to turn yellow. In a brown eye, darker brown. When you have a cold and flu-like symptom, the acute phases come out as clear mucus and white mucus basically. But the subacute stages, you start coughing up yellow mucus, which matches your yellowing in your eye. It's that simple. It all correlates perfectly. Now, as we continue to create acute manifestations and ignore the symptomology or treat that with pharmaceuticals or even herbs, then you're creating all these manifestations start going deeper and deeper and deeper. And the third stage is the chronic stages. Now, in the acute to subacute stages of lymph stagnation, you start imposing on cells and can create cellular hyper or hypoactivity by the congestive and acidic nature. This can create hyperthyroidism, hyper anything in the body, or hypo conditions. Either one, flip a coin. However, when you leave the subacute stages and dig in there, and your body's getting more into the chronic levels, this turns a blue eye brown. I have brown eyes here. I've shown you that you only see a speck or two of blue. That's how chronic the lymphatic system is. This then sets up hypofunction always of tissue. It suppresses the function and tissue. Everything starts to go into the hypofunctions. In a brown eye, it turns it very brown. These chronic stages are like arthritises and fibromyalgias and lupuses and Lyme's and things like this, where you've had years of lymph stagnation without the proper adrenal steroid effects and all the effects the body does to counteract this acidosis. The loss of calcium, the bone spurs, all the things you're witnessing is simply the body's effort to deal with extreme chronic acidosis. Remember, we went over that study from a university, the calcium buffering system. If you're a medical doctor and you don't understand that, then you don't know why people have varicose veins, why they have petechia, bruising easy, why they have depression, osteoporosis. You don't understand any of those things. Why you have bone spurs. You don't understand any of those things. Prolapsus, spasticity. You don't understand any of those things. But it's important that you as the lay people do. Because if you have a modality that's lost and got their head up somewhere, that the sun doesn't shine, you don't want to go there with them. Because that's what will happen to your world. You'll have a world where the sun doesn't shine. So really want to understand these. In the final stages of lymph toxicity and cellular weaknesses, we end up in the decay or the atrophy or the degenerative states. Medical doctors simply call these states the cancer states. Ridiculous, because these are the degenerative states. After a while, it's no longer inflammation on the outside of the cell. You're breaking down the cell inside of itself, what we call intracellular acidosis, and the cell's going to mutate from that. You're going to suppress its function by mucus and acidosis, but you're going to mutate it as it becomes intracellular acidosis. And you can call that a cancer cell if you want, and make people full of fear, but you have to understand that you have these four processes to get there first. You can't make a cancer cell out of an acute condition. That is the beginning of an atypical cell. And as you move through the subacute toward chronic, you're making cells atypical in whatever location that's happening. The natural scheme of things is that after a while, you don't remove that acid and you have a chronic stagnation, you're going to chew up cells. Is that any wonder that it doesn't take place? No. That's easy for people to understand. If you understand, these four phases are important. Here's an example. Jim entered the hospital in an acute case of appendicitis. All right? So basically what that's saying is that he has pain immediately. There's a little fallacy with that statement, and I want to lead you to it. So he has an acute pain. Right on set, he runs to the ER. They get him to the ER. They found that his appendix had burst. So they suction him out, sewed him up, saved Jim. That's a little wrong. That's not how that happened. Jim was not in an acute case of appendicitis. He had an acute case of pain. Actually, it's not an acute case. It's a degenerative case of pain. Jim entered the hospital with a degenerative case of appendicitis. Opened him up and found that it had burst and everything else. That is not an acute condition of an appendix. That is a degenerative state of an appendix. See, so you have to understand these four phases that the body goes through, and we all go through those phases. And when you detox, they start reversing themselves backwards. You start eliminating, you start regenerating that which is degenerating. You start moving back through the chronic stages and eliminating those symptoms and coming back through the acute stages and then the acute. You can pick up every symptom you've ever had in your life before. Even from trauma, car accidents, or whatever, you can start picking up symptoms that are stored in cell memories. So detox is a world of walking backwards and cleaning out all the mess, the mucus, the acids that we put in there, or the body has created through its response mechanisms to the foreign proteins and foods that we're eating. That's all that is. So it's important that looking where you are in the eyes at these stages, because each stage offers its own level of problems. The acute and subacute, those are easier stages for anybody to get rid of. We treat those medically like they're some kind of diseases. Are you going to have microbes involved? Always. Why? Sewer system. And when you have sewage backing up, whether it's proteins or whatever, you're going to get these things breaking down. Putrefaction in the body, fermentation. So we have fungus growing all through us because we're not eliminating our carbons and our nitrogens and all this. We're holding all this in the body. After a while on these high proteins, the kidneys, of course, lose the ability to filter because all these proteins and all this acidosis now is affecting kidney function and bowel function. We know that man's colon is in a hell of a bad shape because of high protein diets. This is a proven fact by, I bet, hundreds of studies, and of course the latest was the World Health Organization 30-year study. So, I don't care for the World Health Organization that much, but when the World Health Organization does a study and it showing the drastic effects of protein diets on the GI tract, linking it to cancers, I'm in. Because we've had studies like this for years and years proving this point. And the proof of that is when you stop eating those, go back to a living food diet, foods that are more harmonious with the Homo sapien, and you use a few herbs to fix some of the weaknesses, all this goes away and repairs itself. There's proof in the theory. There's no proof in the theory of high protein diets and all this stuff that the medical are claiming because it creates more acidosis, more problems, and the patient ends up dying or going down. No. Understand these 4 basic processes of dis-ease or congestion or however you wish to look at this. You can call it the 4 phases of disease if you want. That's their field, but whatever you want. Very important to understand these, and that in detoxing is simply going back on these stages you created. You can't blame detox for anything. You have to blame, fork to mouth, spoon to mouth, whatever. Now, also in this, I want to talk about the 4 processes of getting well. Because to be healthy, you have 4 processes that the human body has to go through. And you want to look at these. And I'm seeing a lot of these in your eyes there from the class. And these 4 phases are easy to understand. The first phase that the body has to go through is a food processing phase. And this food processing phase is taken up predominantly by the pancreas. Now you've got your hydrochloric acid and pepsin in the stomach for proteins, breaking them down to the polypeptides, and then the poly and the peptides are then dealt with into the amino acids through alkaline chains of trypsin and so forth in the small bowel. The initial hit and here's another problem, the initial hit on a protein, of course, is an acid hit. And that neutralizes any mouth alkaline enzymes and things like this. And this is why we highly recommend you get away from protein consumption or eat it by itself, because you'll neutralize your base chemistry, digestive enzymes. Acids neutralize bases, and bases neutralize acids. That's chemistry. Acids do not neutralize acids. And medical people have to get with this because now they're walking so much in the criminal side of life by giving people acids and recommending acid diets when people are extremely chronically acidic. And this just takes them down to Hellville. Just horrible. So digestion is the first phase. You have to have a good pancreas. If you're seeing undigested food matter in the stools, now Homo sapiens are not herbivores, so we have a hard time with your lettuces and kales. But if you see undigested pieces of lettuce and tomatoes and stuff, check the pancreas, but still start super chewing a little better. But look at the pancreas. The gallbladder is another organ that hydrolyzes the lipids from the duct, from the lymphatic capillaries in the small bowel. So you got to make sure these tissues are up and running. They get their feed from the colon, genetically, embryonically, and symbiotically. So when the colon is chronic, these areas tend to go chronic as well. So you always want to fix digestion. Digestion is the process that's like the Kentucky Derby, a racehorse, right? A horse race. So the Kentucky Derby, I'm up from near there. And my sister was a horse freak, of course, and we had horses, obviously. So when the gates open, the horses take off, and your fall's right there. That's when you lose digestion. Your horse stops right there in the beginning. You're down. That's it. You lost the race. So faulty digestion must be fixed. What would be the second most important phase that your body must go through? Absolutely, absorption. This is the huge misunderstanding that is in this world, allopathically and even in the lay people. And you've got to understand this one. This one is a big deal. Understanding the lymphatic system is key to understanding the health of the human body. If you don't understand the lymphatic system, like we're putting it out there, you're just like lost. You don't know why there's symptoms. You don't understand anything about anything in the human body. You're blaming the blood for everything. And that puts you way back from where our group is. Our group is the most understands health the most of any group on the planet, in my opinion. You guys are doing incredible work with people. But understand these phases you're going through. So you have to fix digestion. Now, absorption. You have to absorb the nutrients you just digested. What could block absorption? Number one, how about mucoid plaque? Mucoid plaque is like amyloid plaque. They're both about the same thing. These are proteins, and particularly dairy proteins. Remember, gluten. It's a protein, but it's a glue. So we're eating a meat sandwich. The white bread on the sandwich is glue, and then the meat, of course, is protein. So this glue tends to, ever make paper mache in art class? Paper mache is almost as hard as this crystal. You can throw it at a drywall and it'll knock a hole in it. That's paper mache, and that's basically what we do is paper mache our bowel walls, and it blackens the wall. Medical doctors are quick to jump and say, hey, that's from the use of herbs. Well, interesting. I have so many people that never had herbs that have black bowels. I should be able to show you that because I have Jensen's endoscopy and colonoscopy before and after a workup that we did, and you would not believe it. I think I've showed that before in one of the videos. But now, that builds up on the wall. What about interstitially? Interstitially is around the cells that make up the bowel wall itself. Small and large bowels. How about the stomach wall? These are cells, and that interstitial obviously is how we get blood and how we get nutrition to the cell, but how we also remove its metabolitic waste. So we have to be able to get absorption of nutrients. The most blocking of absorption of nutrients is the lymphatic system, the stagnation of the lymphatic system, and you see it in your eyes so much. A lot of your eye reports, I'm going all over this with you guys, and you can see that rope right around your bowel wall, which is heavy lymph stagnation. You're not going to absorb X amount of nutrition through that. So unless you have appropriate digestion and absorption, you're done right there, or at least a big part of your nutritional and energetic needs are not being met, right? And of course, this continues to set up acidosis further in the body, right? Now, what's the third stage? And this stage gets the medical doctors, gets the naturopaths. They don't get this. You have naturopaths clinging on deficiencies and things like this. And we've discussed these phases before. I just felt it was important to come back with this. Kind of the bump I'm getting. Once you digest this nutrition, once you absorb this nutrition, how do you utilize it? How does the body utilize anything? It's called the endocrine glands. The glands control the organs. The glands control literally everything. How? Hormones, steroids, neurotransmitters, all the goodies they produce, right? And it's all from the conscious awareness of things. Oh, everything's very conscious here. You know, it's not like everything's done in the blindness of life, because there is no blindness. Everything is conscious. Consciousness is how everything comes out of consciousness. There can't be anything dead, like in completely dead and unawake, because everything comes out of awareness. So everything has a certain level of awareness. Some very, very mundane and, low, and others extremely awake. But it's still all awareness. Whether it's the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, other big kingdoms out there. For some of you, the angelic kingdoms. So utilization. What glands are most responsible for the utilization of chemistry in the human body? You are right on, guys. The adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands produces 24, 25, if not more, mineralocorticosteroids. So zinc, selenium, iron, all need to be metabolized or utilized in the presence of adrenal steroids. And this include blood sugars, carbon. Your adrenals are those steroids are huge in the utilization of chemistry in the human body, except one. Which one? Calcium, and that is a parathyroid and maybe even a little calcitonin from the thyroid hormones. Essential. You don't have these hormones, you don't have these steroids, you're not going to utilize. So if you don't digest well, you don't absorb well, and you don't utilize well, how can you say you're deficient in anything? I gotta take more of something. How can you take more if you're not digesting, absorbing, or utilizing it? You can't. You can force the body, but that's not cool, because then you start setting up side effects, even taking natural supplements. Not the way to Wellville. Not the way to Wellville. Waddy World. Okay, so let's say that you digest well, you absorb well, you utilize well. What's the final stage that's essential to wellness and health? Elimination. Proper elimination. Well, it's easy to understand the elimination of digestive waste. However, white flours and stuff leave some of the undigested matter stuck on the bowel wall. That's a problem. We get pocketed areas from this, and now our little diverticulitis, the diverticulums, these little bowel pockets get full of fecal matter, and they begin to rot. I mean, it's a mess. So there's big problems in the GI tract, but that is digestive waste. What about, and I do say that the colon, I do believe there is some interstitial waste that going out the colon. I do believe that. Because when you see the detoxification, you get tons of mucus out of your stools. It's not all, I don't think, just on the wall. I think you do have some interstitial purging that way. That's why I created the astringent, high astringent GI broom to help that mucosic draw and pull to try to get this mucus out of that interstitial space, because you can't absorb with it. And get that plaque off the wall. And a lot of you see that black stools coming out of you. That's vital to get that out of you if you want proper absorption. So, elimination. What about the huge metabolism and activity of muscles and the activity of all these, from the Krebs cycles to methylation cycles to all the cycles that are involved in keeping the cells functioning? There are metabolitic wastes, we'll call them. Waste from activity, lactic acid from moving of the muscles, boratics, the phosphorics, the carbonic acids. All these acids are not converted. You, like the carbon dioxides and things, you also have some of this that has to come out. Some of these gases have to come out of the skin. And you'll see that if you will watch the skin emitting gases out of the human body. Vital to eliminate. And what you don't eliminate, you accumulate. And you can't bitch when you start to see swelling or tumors, because that's an accumulation of lymph. That is an elimination problem, right? Right. Well, how did we lose our elimination? Because we started eating acid ash foods. The humans did way, way back. And little at a time, we've been breaking down our colon and our kidneys from these high protein diets. And now we have serious kidney and GI tract problems from this. But it has shut down the kidney's ability to filter and eliminate metabolitic waste. Whether medical doctors get it or not, who cares? You must understand your kidneys are vital organs of elimination of metabolitic waste along with the skin. Blood is not an eliminator of waste to the outside world. The kidneys and skin is. The blood does not eliminate. It's not an elimination system. It is the kitchen of the body. It's tied to the digestive system and the system of absorption. The elimination system is tied to the lymphatic system. A whole different system in the body. That's why there's so much confusion in health today, because everybody's been bumping on medical theories which are bullcrap, bull hockey. And they can't be proved. You can't prove medical theory. Look at it. Millions are dying every day from this. The theory is ridiculous. There's no basis, no sound basis for any of this. And applied theories, oh, bad, 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 bad.
For the last time, no.
Now, unfortunately, we're having to go back and start fixing the elimination organs so we can fix the digestive and absorption and utilization tissues. If we don't get the elimination fixed and get these acids and all this hardened sputum out of the body, then the cells are going to go down always. And we can't live in fear of the word cancer, because it's just a degenerative state through these 4 stages that we've allowed our body to go through. Unfortunately, now some of the children are born in these chronic and degenerative stages at the cellular level. This is disheartening extremely for the Homo sapien, but it's because the Homo sapien has kept itself ignorant. It's like the press over in this country has lied, and way before Trump, this press, I went back and this press has lied about things for many, 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 many tens of years. We do not have an honest press in America anymore. It is controlled by Time Warner and the World Bank. So you get what the World Bank wants you to get. Lies and deceit, I mean, it's a mess. But You can't fall into that. And of course, the AMA is the World Bank side. Good way to lose the population, bring it down, right? But we've got to get out of that type of thinking and understand you have four stages of dis-ease. No matter what stage they tell you you're in, you got 4 of these stages. And within those stages are stages. All right? Now, then you got the 4 processes. To fix these stages, you've got to fix these 4 processes. You've got to start digesting your foods. You've got to start absorbing your foods. You've got to start utilizing your foods. So you're always going after elimination issues. You're always going after the skin and the kidneys. Always. You don't fix elimination, you're done. You're just throwing stuff in there hoping you'll digest better. Then you end up taking digestive enzymes because that doesn't work. You end up ruining everything because you're not focused on the proper way to get well. This is why when you look at our detox program, we're after everything I just told you about. Because unless you fix proper elimination, you get metabolitic waste moving and you start hydrating interstitially, you're just going to keep getting blowback to the cell. That is called inflammation before it's intracellular. In other words, as acids build up around cells and interstitially from lymph stagnation, metabolitic waste, the cell is able to continue to discharge to a certain point. Then, of course, we call this inflammation. Inflammation is a natural immune response by your body. They deal with interleukins and things like this, but in reality, the calcium buffering system is part of the inflammatory response. The cholesterol buffering system is part of the inflammatory response. Matter of fact, the cholesterol response is your immune response. And if your adrenals are low and your steroids are low, your body's going to use cholesterol directly since it's a cholesterol system. Your lymphatic system is the cholesterol system. Your HDL is the phospholipid in the cell wall, and LDL is basically part of the not only the adrenal steroids it's used as antacids, but also part of the lymph fluid itself. Essential. All of this crap, this mounds and mounds of intellectual jargon and bull crap from the AMA, and now they can't even answer any of these questions, so now they're into the genes. Are you missing this gene and that gene? This is all in the mutation of cells, which can properly rebuild themselves and get all this back. Don't fall into that kind of crap. There's nowhere else for them to go, and after they get rid of the gene theory, they're done because there's nowhere else. They have to bring it up into some mysterious mystique thing so you don't understand, and they have the knowledge. Well, we don't know. It's your genetics. It is always your genetics. Every cell in your body, remember this, every cell in your body is a genetic cell. But genetics doesn't mean weaknesses always. It can mean strengths. A lot of you, I'm looking at some great strong genes in this class. And I've told you that, genetically speaking, some of you have mighty fine genes. And there's always genetic weaknesses in people, of course. But that's just the state of the cell. That can be regenerated since everything comes out of awareness. Nothing is static. And remember, you have to understand how the God worlds are put together. You have to understand who God really is. Not a little white man in a beard. You have to understand what awareness, where do you get your awareness? What is awareness? What gives you the ability to be awake, to comprehend anything? What's beyond the mind in its intellectual jargon? It's taking awareness and dividing it up into pieces. What's behind? Pure consciousness. And most of the larger religions teach consciousness in some form or another. From Hinduism to Buddhism, they teach that awareness or consciousness is the definition of God. And it is infinite. It is something that is not embodied. And there's no definition to that. Matter of fact, remember in quantum physics, basically they're saying, now we understand that energy is what chemistry is made of. Everything is made of frequencies of electromagnetic energy. But what is energy? And in quantum physics, the latest word is awareness, intelligence. We can prove now that energy has intelligence. Intelligence? What is intelligence? I can't put my hand on it. It's not physical. It's not something I can pick up. That's right. And that is where you come from. You're only using this physical thing. These stages and these processes are physical stages and processes. And they're real simple to understand and real simple to look at. And when you have a cold and flu-like symptom, and you start hawking up all this mucus, you start getting the clear white mucus. That's your acute mucus. That's surface stuff. You want the deeper stuff. What's the deeper? Oh, it's coming yellow now. Remember, the subacute stages turns a blue-eye yellow. Oh, here's that yellow mucus coming out. All right, come on. That's a deeper mucus. Then if you get deeper, you get into the green to brown. That is your advanced subacute to chronic stages. And by the way, I have gotten black crud out of children in detox. That is your degenerative stages, where you're starting to see a lot of putrefaction and fermentation in the human body, and the death of cells are assured. And these are just stages we've created by suppressing the acute stages. If you always cleaned out an acute stage, and here's an example. And I've told this before. For probably a good year, I was craving a chocolate malt. Oh, and there are such things as called hot fudge malts. Oh, I remember. Oh my God! And I was craving it so bad. This is probably 20 years ago or more. And our mall down here has a little ice cream shop. And I see kids there all the time and stuff. And going, oh. So I went up to this guy in the mall and I said, "Listen, do you make little baby malts?" He's looking at me and he said, "Well, yeah." And I said, I just want a little bitty thing. I just want to taste it, right? So he made me a hot fudge malt. Oh, so I'm walking down the mall out to my truck. So good. By the time I get out to my truck, I've got a sore throat from all the mucus from these primed of dairy proteins. These are not digestible proteins. They're constipating proteins. Just bad, right? So I got a sore throat. Well, if I didn't realize that I created this by drinking that friggin' thing, which I only drank about half of it and threw it away because I felt it coming. Mucus-forming foods, all right? If you get mucus and congestion in your throat or a sore throat, don't blame microbes. Blame the mucus you created by the very types of food you're eating. So if I would have thought, oh, I caught something in the mall, I got to go to my MD and get an antibiotic, that would have been stupid of me. So I would have suppressed an acute manifestation that I created. Where would have that mucus that I was getting out, where would that have gone if I would have suppressed that stage? It would have been shoved deeper interstitially around my cells. And of course that sore throat would have lasted, could have got rid of it there with an antibiotic real quick. Now, I didn't know that was created from the milk, and I went and had another one. More mucus, more suppression. Pretty soon I got a tumor, or I've got nodules in my thyroid, or I got heavy sinus congestion, I got bronchitis, I got pneumonia. Because I was treating it like I caught some disease and didn't realize I'm creating all this. So I went home, got an apple, coughed up a big wad of mucus, sore throat went away, and I was good. Because I knew I created the mucus and I needed something to break up mucus, which fruits are astringent in nature and break up mucus. They also hydrate, because most of this is coming from an acidic side of life, and they hydrate, of course, and then you get more of an anionic environment, which breaks things up and then allows things to be expectorated. The medical community has brainwashed the humans to the point of idiocy. And this is a sad day for them, because this is bad karma for these guys, and they're going to have to live through these conditions that they're treating. And they're going to have to deal with them the right way, in their own world. This is this karma that it's all set up for itself, because even a medical doctor is God expressing itself. Everything is God expressing itself, but in levels of awareness. Or we could also say levels of unconsciousness as well. This is just unconsciousness. But the human being cannot remain unconscious at these levels anymore, or the planet will be destroyed, done, and we'll start again. Cannot do that. I mean, you can do that, and it will happen. Look at Atlantis and Lemuria. Some people think that these are some of the things that happened there. So, and the whole earth could be destroyed, that's for sure. And that would be nothing. A blink in the eye. Now let's try over here. So man has to awaken here. And you guys are the beautiful beings coming here to help awaken. You guys have taken this on. Some of you got some bodies you have to work through, but it'll make you stronger and tougher. But remember this, when you're going after your body, Don't hit the lymph system harder than you hit the kidneys, or you're going to have that swelling like the one girl had. You can't do that. You got to get the kidneys filtering, so don't overhit the lymph system. When you start on fruit, you're going after the lymph system. You're also going after the kidneys, because fruit helps to get the kidneys opened up as well. But when using herbs, go after the kidneys with only one lymphatic until you think the road is clear, and then head on with the lymphatic ones. Some of you can tolerate 2 lymphatic formulas. Some of you have been doing 3. But those are the ones that are filtering a little better, and they don't get the bump from that. That's all that is. All that is. But I wanted to discuss this because I was going over a bunch of your eyes, and I'm trying to talk to you about these 4 phases in there, and it's making these iris analyses a little longer than I anticipated, but it's important that everyone understand these 4 phases and don't get caught up in the medical doctor's stupidity there. These are 4 phases, and they can be identified in the eye, and that's why it's important to learn how to identify the eye and the markings in the eye. It's easy. It's like anything else. Things seem a little hard at first, but when you start, oh, look how simple this is. And I hope that I make iridology very simple for you, because it is a simple science discovered by a surgeon. Too bad they didn't take that on and understand the full depth of what the eye can tell us in those 4 stages that we're dealing with. And you can look at what tissues you have in the body, what stage you're in, that sort of thing. But remember, if you have hyperactivity or hypoactivity, you can be in acute to subacute stage. The chronic stages are always hypo. Everything's going down. Everything's going down. And the next, as you move through these deeper chronic levels, you start destroying tissue, because these acids have been in there way too long and become intracellular acidosis as well. So you start destroying the cells. Is that hard for people to understand? No. But no, we have to put it in some mystique like cancer and scare people to death and treat that. You have to understand that most people that die from degenerative states are dying from the treatment of these degenerative states that medical doctors have lumped into some mysterious thing called cancer, which they don't even understand. That's pretty bad to go to a doctor and take their protocols when they don't even understand what they're treating. And that's where you get acid treating acid. Ho, ho, ho. That's not chemistry. And any medical doctor that blow back on you or me saying that we're pseudoscience, that's because that's the kettle. That's the black kettle painting itself black. That's how when the criminals go, no, it's you that's creating the problem, when really the finger needs to be pointed backwards. We're the saviors on this planet, and people need to awaken to that. Without the awareness of the lymphatic system and how it uses the kidneys and the skin as its major eliminative organs, what would the skin sweat for? Just to be funny? You sweat just for the heck of it? There's a reason for everything. Why do you urinate? What's in urination? And this is a sad thing, because when you do start filtering, medical doctors say you caught an infection. They don't understand the role of the kidneys in the great lymphatic system. And until they do, the ignorance is just gut-wrenching. And especially for the beautiful people, souls out there are dying and not finishing their journeys like they should. And the human journey can be so much greater and better than it is. They got to quit wallowing in this dirt of unconsciousness. The mind is one of the biggest instruments of this decay. And this is why I'm trying to help you guys understand. Get out of your thoughts. Get beyond thinking. Because thoughts and thinking has been conditioned by our governments, by our world bankers, by all these people. So people believe things that are not even true because their minds have been conditioned that way. Break that conditioning by breaking thought. And the only way you can break thought is become the observer. Start watching. Start seeing how all this thing is. Start putting the puzzle together. Like fake news. I watch multiple news channels to see who's saying what. And boy, unbelievable. But if you don't observe these things and you're lost in thinking, and your thinking has been conditioned by your parents, by your state, by your party you're in, by your church, by all these conditions, what do you know that's true? What do you know that's actually true? See, and that's the point. Creation is really just the drama of life. It's just the way that it can express itself in unlimited amount of expressions. So there's experiences. Consciousness can experience itself because it just is. There's no self-experiencing. That's why there's creation, a little bit by, and it's massive. And just it's just you can't even put a finger on that. So thanks for listening to me, but really appreciate that. But look at these 4 stages and these 4 processes that the body has to go through. That's what you're after. You, in these 4 phases or processes that the body has to go through to be well, you have to focus on elimination first. Get your kidneys to filter, get your skin to sweating, get your basal temperatures up to the upper 97s, 98. Get your skin opened up there. Get away from, especially with skin rings, don't do the infrared. You're liable to create some skin cancer there. You're burning cells. You really want to get into a steam sauna where you're using alkalized and energized water. Maybe throw a little lemon essential oil in there just to give you a little extra detox. You can buy these steam saunas for $1,200-$1,300 and sit them in your bathrooms or on your back porches. Well worth the investments. And get your skin opened up there. Or get a Native American to build a sweat lodge on your property like I did mine. It was fun. Hot. Hot is for sure. And you want to get all the soot off the rocks before you bring it into the tent. Let me tell you, some things you want to do with sweat lodges. But it's enough to say that learn these 4 phases because you have to fix elimination. You might have digestive problems and you can go after them simultaneously. You might have absorption problems. You're going after the lymph system no matter what. So you're going after that. But you have to fix this elimination to get everything moving, to get hydration going, or you're going to lose your electrolytes. That's when you see your urine going alkaline when you shift to a raw food diet. You're too agglomerated to take immediate hydration. It takes a while interstitially around the body to get true hydration and all the fluids moving properly. Lucky the blood has to have this bicarbonate mix and to keep itself base and a calcium drawing, a buffering system as well, or there would be no humans on the planet. We are the one species that are eating out of our element. We're eating acid-forming foods instead of base-forming foods. That's a big no-no for all species. The cat family suffers from that the most. And they suffer from lower endurance and just no endurance, asleep all the time, and just not a life. Just not a good condition in the cat family. So I'm just doing a short video because I wanted to get this out to you. Because I hope this is helpful to you. Again, we've talked about these before, but look at these when you're looking at your health and why we use herbs for. We're using herbs for digestion to get the improvement of the pancreas and the liver gallbladder up. We use the liver gallbladder herbs for that one. The liver gallbladder herbs help the pancreas. So we're after those. Obviously, we're after proper digestion. We want absorption. So what system do you go after absorption? You're going after the lymphatic system. We're also drawing on that bowel wall and cleaning that mucoid plaque on the bowel wall. That's why the stomach and bowel formulas. We want to remove the inflammation, the impactions in the bowel wall. We want to get interstitial absorption going on here. But until you remove the impactions and an interstitial constipation, that's what they don't get. But how do you explain IBS, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis? How do you explain that in the medical community? Autoimmune? Ridiculous. Anything autoimmune is lymphatic. And lymphatic stagnation interstitially in the intestinal wall is acid stagnation interstitially in the bowel wall. This sets up what? Inflammation, swelling. So what you have is a thickened bowel wall, you have poor absorption, and now you can have the blowback, which is ulceration. Acid's just chewing up the cells. You don't see that unless you have stagnation. Acids are not going to chew up a cell if you have proper hydration and your fluids are moving properly. The lymph is filtering all your metabolitic waste. The lymph nodes are pulling and releasing and cleaning. No problem. Stagnation causes acidosis, and that's a stagnation of metabolitic waste interstitially. And of course, I'm working my arm, I'm creating lactic acid. What if I can't remove that lactic acid that I'm creating? I get stiff and painful. So I've got to remove that which I'm creating in terms of acids. That's essential. And all that man suffers from is the lack of moving that out. It shuts down the pancreas, it's shutting down the gallbladder, it's creating all these individual problems that medical doctors, they don't get all that, so they put it in the form of diseases. Everybody's got all these different types of diseases. When everything is linked to the same thing. And it is cause and effect. What you eat is cause and effect. And understand the Homo sapien vertebrae. We are islanders. We are frugivores. We might not be able to get there back there yet, but we are high frugivores. And we can handle some vegetables, thank God. So you've got to look at those and understand that when we change our diet to those types of foods, everything starts hydrating. You start to see that cationic environment becoming an anionic environment. It just takes a little time for this to happen. Then you start to see more chemistry in your urine. You start to sweat out more things. If you're acid, your skin could look a little red or a little worse, but these are acids coming out of you. At least you're not keeping them in you and burning your cells up. See how that is? That's how simple all this is right around these core principles. Fixing these core principles here, you'll stop these phases of disease or stagnation or forms of acidosis, because you can simply say these 4 stages are different stages of acidosis. The final being the final stage, the deterioration, the atrophy stage. Call it cancer, call it whatever you want, but in reality it's just the degenerative stage of tissues. And yeah, you're going to lose cells. They can be rebuilt. But to rebuild tissue, you have to remove that which is stagnant, correct? Common sense. You can treat that with pharmaceuticals, and all you're going to do is probably off yourself or hurt yourself even more to control something you need to fix. It's that simple. So your diet and your herbs are designed to fix those issues that we've discussed here and to stop this movement of these stages and reverse them backwards through the acute manifestation of the stage and then back to Wellville in a strong, healthy state and condition. And these states are beyond human experience. But some of you are tapping those stages of high magnetic energy, high energy levels, high levels of health, and you see what it's doing to you. Look at Ian. He went down real skinny, and then up he went, and now he's experiencing some of these higher levels of vitality. Remember this one? It's all in the teeth. I mean, there's proof everywhere. There's proof everywhere that we're frugivores, everywhere. Only those that wish not to look, the deniers, who cares? Those guys are going to embellish their own suffering. Oh, don't worry about that. You have to have detached compassion. That is God's suffering itself, putting itself through these, because the duality is essential for the growth of consciousness, the maturing of consciousness, because remember, consciousness is all. There's no self-understanding of that. It just is. Get yourself to the now and experience what the now is. What life is beyond thinking, beyond thought. What is the present moment like? What is the state of observation like? You will then begin the mind as beginning to watch. As you begin to watch through consciousness, your mind is also watching and picking up those things that you're seeing and starting to then put them in categories, putting them into the library and everything else. But that's the mind doing that, and if you're the watcher, you can watch the mind doing that. Work on that, and you will become an extremely high spiritual being. Most of you already are. You're just cleaning up some stuff here and bringing the light to the very dark world called planet Earth. This is a very dark level of creation, a very acidic level right now. The consciousness is so constipated. There's chisels going on all over the place, and it's opening, and you guys are very much of a part of it. I love you all for that. Good work helping others. But realize, and it's easy to explain to others these phases, and let them watch these videos and understand, because you've all went through these phases. They're easy to identify. They're easy to look at, especially when you got going through cold and flu-like symptoms, when you're going through these stages. But these 4 stages of being well and healthy is important, from digestion to absorption to utilization. Don't forget utilization. What the role of the communicators? They make everything happen, so you're always making glands healthy, right? What is the number one cause of making everything go down? Acids in the lymphatic system, not the blood system. The blood is only the delivery system. And it is the individual that has to understand the difference between acid-forming or acid-ash foods and base-forming or alkaline-forming foods, the difference between those two. You cannot maintain health of a species on acid-forming foods. Impossible. And it is not done anywhere in nature. You don't see that anywhere. The closest to that is the cat family, which they still try to get predigested protein through the gut tissue and predigested vegetable matter. Carnivores do not like to eat other carnivores as a rule. A lion will eat another lion only in a statement, not for the food of it. So I hope that's helpful.
Give me a Y, give me an E, give me an F. Yeah!
Woo! Thank you guys. Love you guys. I'll get to your questions maybe this afternoon. I've got some meetings to go to and get done. But let's go have some fun. All right. Love you.